All right, so we're going to do two things today. I'm going to show you how to integrate what we were doing with landscaping into how you're going to work with alpha channels in your renders. So I have sort of a sample project here. It's similar to yours and by that I mean that it's kind of like a semi-interior space, even though this is a little more exterior than yours, but it kind of serves the same purpose. All right. So it's like a balcony, okay, and it's overlooking, I'm going to say the ocean in this case. So basically, what I did when I rendered, in case you don't recall, is I made sure to check on the alpha channel. That's the only channel that we're really going to be working with. There are a bunch of other things we can do, but the alpha channel is what we're going to work with for this render. So the alpha channel's on, and when it's on, you should have these two little buttons here. You'll have the R button and you'll have the A button. So the A button looks like this, and I want to point out something very important for you so you understand what's going on when we get into Photoshop. The alpha channel isn't just black and white, okay? It's not binary. It's actually scalar, so it actually goes across the entire grayscale spectrum. So whatever is labeled as gray is actually going to be translucent when you bring it into Photoshop. So I think you'll get a kick out of that when we get going on it. But let's take this thing into Photoshop. What we're going to do is save the file. So go up to the image save. Make sure you check on save all channels, and then navigate to where you want to save it. So I'm going to temporarily save it in my dump folder. I'm going to call this one landscape tutorial thingy. And I'll put it in here. So let's call this, I won't call it alpha. Let's just call it render, and it'll give me the alpha channel. Hit OK. And then when you open that folder up, you'll have the render and you'll have the render alpha. So we're going to go into Photoshop, and let me open up Photoshop here, and I'm going to drop in my render. So this is going to come in with the background kind of all in black, but if you set up your environment settings properly, it's going to show you the kind of sun settings and material reflections of the environment on your materials if that's applicable. So hang on a second, I just need to find something else. So let's do layer. Let's go to layer mask reveal. We are going to bring the alpha in, so you could just kind of drop that in. It's going to show you this layer like that, and so you can just select the whole thing and copy it, and then if I recall correctly, it's Alt-click on the alpha mask and it brings up your alpha. Yeah, it's Alt-click, by the way. Or did I think I did Control-click. Let me check that again. Alt-click. Alt-click. On that, and you'll get into the reveal mask. So a reveal mask is basically going to give you that scalar mask that's going to pull and rip material out of your render. So when I paste that back in, it's going to look like that in the alpha mask, but when I go back into this and I turn my top layer off, then it kind of pulled it out. So what is most significant about this that you notice? Raise your hand. Anybody? Shout it out. What do you notice that's important about this that you see on screen right now? Getting rid of the background. Not just that. There's more to it. What was I talking about with grayscale? Transparency. Right. Translucency more than transparency. So, so see these glass panels here, right? Those glass panels are actually showing part of the material behind, whatever that may be. So what that means is when I pull in a background material or landscape or trees or whatever the elements are, it's actually going to keep that glass-like property on that material anywhere it is in my render. So whatever your glass transparency or opacity is set to, it's going to translate into the alpha map, and it will properly block out whatever your background materials are. It's super powerful. Okay, so anyway, what I'm going to do is find kind of like a nice background for my render that fits. And I'm not exactly sure what that's going to be yet, but I think I'm kind of envisioning that my building is sitting up high and it's a balcony, so it's overlooking the ocean, right? So that's what I'm going to pick. I sort of did this ahead of time. I grabbed an ocean horizon, and I picked one in particular, this one, for a very specific reason. So why would I choose this one instead of this one? And I'll let you look at the render so you can understand. The sun, right, exactly. So I chose this one because the sun is on the left side, even though, well, we'll talk about this in a second, but it's on a side of the render. That's important. And rather than something where the sun is in the middle of the render. And that's because the way my shadow is being cast, it's actually being cast from the right to the left with kind of like a middle-high sun angle. So knowing where your sun is in the sky is incredibly important for picking the right background for your render. So if you don't really understand sun angles and where to expect shadows to be casting, then it's very easy to fall into the trap of having an unbelievable render just because the shadows just feel wrong, if that makes any sense. So I don't know if this one's perfect, but I'm going to drop it in and see how it looks. Control V to paste it in. Free transform. Let's kind of get this thing a little smaller. Not sure how big it is. Something like that to start. And we'll leave it at the horizon to start. So I'm just testing this out for a little bit. I'll drop that in the background. Looking pretty good. I do think that the horizon's a little high, so I think it's actually going to wind up being more like this, and go up to something like that. Yeah, that looks about right. And we actually need to flip this thing horizontally so that the sun is coming from the right-hand side. So I'm going to put it so that the sun's kind of far off to the right. Okay. So there's my balcony overlooking the ocean. What questions do you have? All right. So there's a little bit more to it. I'm going to drop in a little bit of kind of entourage and like people and some trees and stuff to allude to the fact that this thing is sitting on a beach. Yeah, other than that, that's how you put a background in a render using the alpha channel out of Maxwell.